Local programming on KRWG made possible in part by viewers like you. Thank you.
Hello and welcome to Fronteras, a Changing America. I'm Anthony Moreno. The Animal Service Center of the Mesilla Valley is the only open admission municipal animal shelter operating in Doña Ana County and the city of Las Cruces. The ASCMV, governed by a joint powers agreement, includes the city of Las Cruces and Doña Ana County. It was established in 2008. The ASCMV is an extremely high intake shelter compared to similarly sized locations with less human population to care for the animals. In 2013, ASCMV received nearly 13,000 animals. My guest today is the director of the center, Dr. Beth Vesco-Mock. Dr. Vesco-Mock, thank you very much for joining us.
Well, thank you so much for having me.
I'd like to start off a little bit, if you could share with our audience the mission of the center.
Well, the mission of a government shelter initially was to provide a safe environment if you lost your dog and there was a place for the dog to come to or the cat to come to until you could reclaim it. That was the initial purpose of a government shelter, and to be able to house potential rabies suspects, bite dogs. Bite dogs, if you get bit by a dog, someone has to watch it because it needs to be quarantined for 10 days. But with such an overpopulation of animals coming in and no one claiming that's whenever this shelter became a service center where we're here to service the animals, where we offer adoptions. We work very hard on getting the animals returned back to their owners. We transfer animals out to other shelters in the country that are lacking animals. And we also offer affordable microchipping and affordable spays and neuters. As well as licensing. We are also the licensing agency in the community. So those are all of the things that is part of our mission.
It sounds like you're pretty busy these days.
We are very, very busy, but it's all for good.
Well, as I mentioned earlier, nearly 13,000 animals came to your center in 2013. What are we looking like last year, and how are things looking so far this year?
Things are actually looking very good. I became the executive director when the Animal Service came into fruition in 2008. That first year was actually 15,500 animals that came in. And that's when we implemented a lot of the programs that are currently in place. And you are correct, in 2013 we were down to about 13,000 animals. Last year we were down to about 12,000 animals. And at the rate we're going this year, I am very excited to say that we will probably be around 10,000 intake. So that is a substantial decrease, which will also result in a much higher live release rate for the animals, because it goes hand in hand. You know, when you have that many animals coming in per day, where are they going? You know, last summer we averaged 42 animals a day coming in. Well, you know, there wasn't 42 animals getting reclaimed by their owners. There wasn't 42 animals getting adopted. So where were those animals going? Eventually they do have to go to heaven. So it is very, very exciting to see the decrease in numbers.
What are some of the things that the center's been doing along with the community to really get those numbers down?
The first thing that I started back in 2008 was working on a building to be able to perform public spays and neuters. So that got started in 2009, and we have done approximately 2,000 to 2,300 animals since then, so over 10,000 affordable spays and neuters. That means that we do the surgeries $35 for dogs and $25 for cats. That's really helping with the overpopulation. People are out there feeding animals and all of a sudden they're pregnant, and we need to stop the unwanted litter. So that was the very first program that we really worked hard on. Then we worked hard on working with people on returning the animals back to them. And we have recently been working with the ACO officers, both city and county, through the microchip program. Now the officers can scan the dogs when they get them on their trucks, see that they have a microchip, call the microchip company, get your contact information, call you up, and we can get those animals back to you without them ever coming into the shelter. And the ones who still comes into the shelter, we have very updated information, so we are able to return the animals. And then we have a very, very large transfer program, which is something that's very near and dear to my heart. In the last 3 years, when I got here, my first year, we had 42 animals, I think, transferred out. Last year, we had 1,900 animals transferred out. This week alone, coming up next week, we will have over 100 animals transferred out. The furthest they will be traveling is the state of New Hampshire.
Oh, wow, that's pretty
They're
far.
going on a huge road trip. It's hard to believe that those shelters are in need of our animals. They have committed to 40 Chihuahuas because they do not have Chihuahuas. They have been practicing responsible pet ownership, which is spaying and neutering, since the 70s and 80s. So they do not have unwanted litters like we do. And so they need our animals, so they are wanting them, so we transfer them to them.
Do you work with, besides the city organizations, some community organizations as well?
Oh yes, there's a community coalition where all the nonprofit animal groups are a part of. I'm also a part of that group. But there's the Action Program for Animals, there's Doña County Humane Society, there's Safe Haven, there's the Humane Society for Southern New Mexico, there's all different kinds of smaller breed rescues, so there's different rescues out there that we all work together. SNAP, who promotes spays and neuters. So there's many different programs in the community that are working together in their own little niche to prevent animals from coming into the shelter. The APA mostly takes animals from us and then adopts them out of their facility on Picacho. Then the Cats Meow takes a lot of community cats from people, and they have their little adoption now there on Madrid. Broken Promises works very heavily with community cats, better known as feral cats, but they should be called community cats because that's what they are. Big Kitty Fix is another program that helps with the spaying and neutering of community cats. Doña County Humane Society, they have what's called the Animal Relief Fund. Just say an example, your animal gets hit by a car tonight. You can't quite afford the entire veterinarian bill, and if you qualify, they will help you with that veterinarian bill, so you don't have to bring it to the shelter to be humanely euthanized. You can keep your animal.
So I'd like to know a little bit about what a normal day is at the center, and for you, or should I just leave normal out of it?
Well, there is no such thing as normal. My day so far this morning has been, I got in at 8 o'clock. I had to check to see how many animals had shown up for surgery from the public and the adoptions, as we have contract veterinarians who gets paid for so many surgeries for that day. So I had to pull 5 animals from the main kennels. I had to look to see who had do not feed signs up, and then I pulled those animals so they could be ready for surgery. Then a mother dog and pit bulls, puppies came in last evening. I had already contacted a rescue in Albuquerque last evening. She wanted photos, so I went down to where she's housed to take photos of her and her puppies. They were all in a little dog house, so I had a hard time getting those photos. Then I went up and sent it to her, and then I was working with her on possibly getting a transport on Monday out to Albuquerque on those. Then I had paperwork issues to do. I had to work on medical schedule. We're severely understaffed right now in the administrative realm of the Animal Service Center. So I had to work on schedules for the medical staff. We got that done. And then I needed to work on paperwork issues. Some personnel issues happened yesterday, and I had to deal with the proper paperwork for that. And then I had to call for a reference check out in Tennessee so that was I had to get the time correct. So more personnel issues. And then I started working on getting animals ready next week for the transfers. You need to look them over, make sure they're really physically fit. Then you put their little collars on them and do everything for them. And then a board member came and I had to talk to them, and now I'm here.
Well, you mentioned that staffing shortages. Is that mainly just because of regular staffing shortages, or is it just more like funding?
It's actually not funding. It is just shortages. The Animal Service Center of the Mesilla Valley is a very difficult place to work because there are deaths that is occurring. There was some discussion on a couple animals that was getting put to sleep this morning.
What type of discussion? What goes on? Like, what are some of the things that are saying?
This was a dog. The discussion that we had is a dog that has mange, and it tested positive last night for Demodex mange. So we're making a decision if we want to treat this dog. And then the animal caregiver who has been taking care of this dog has said that this dog has issues with resource guarding, which means that doesn't allow other dogs in his space, doesn't allow other dogs to eat the food, doesn't allow other dogs to play with toys. It's resource guarding. And he just acted up this morning again against another dog. And so we had that discussion, and I made the decision that it's in the best interest of the entire population for this dog to go to heaven. Now, it's a very tough decision to have to make. You have to do that.
I see. Now, you mentioned that you have contract veterinarians working with you as well. How is this region doing as far as having veterinarians in general? How do we rank compared to other areas?
Well, there's a big difference between private practice veterinarians and shelter veterinarians. They practice Cadillac medicine, and unfortunately we can't do that. So it's very, very different. I think we are pretty well staffed in private veterinarians, from what I understand. The shelter veterinarians is a different story. To do spays and neuters, our veterinarian will perform 35 spays and neuters today and be gone by 4 o'clock. That's a lot of surgeries in one day. A private vet would only do 2 or 3. In the morning, and then they go and do their office visits and all that kinds of stuff. So it's a very different environment. It's very difficult to find shelter veterinarians. The veterinarians we currently have at the shelter are all from El Paso. And one has retired, but he's still hanging on till we find another one to replace him. Not that he's ever actually replaceable, but we will be advertising again shortly for another shelter veterinarian to perform the spays and neuters.
Tell me a little bit about the adoption process at the center. How does it work, and what do people go through?
Well, when they come up to the shelter, we encourage them to walk through, and I encourage them, I should say, and not to have a preconceived idea of what animal you want. Because a lot of people do. They want this collar, and they want this personality, and they want this and this and this. And it's like, you don't know that. I encourage people to come through and walk through the shelter with one of our animal caregivers to see which animal touches your heart. Which one do you make eye contact with? Then once you go through that process and you kind of think you have a little animal that you want to go, you have to fill out an adoption questionnaire. We need to make sure this is a stable home for this animal. We really don't want it going out and then coming back, because it's not good for the animal. They're packed animals, and they fall in love with your pack, and it's not really fair to bring them back. So we make sure that you own your own home, and if you don't own your own home, that you're allowed to have a pet where you're renting where you're renting from, because we get a lot of animals returned because the landlord doesn't allow them to have them. And how hard is that on the animal? We do make sure you have to bring a utility bill, because we need to make sure you're a resident here and that you are living where you claim you're living. That's probably about all you have to go through to adopt an animal.
Okay. Well, as far as adopting the animals, is it the same process for both every animal in the shelter?
Pretty much. I mean, we have a couple special need animals right now. We have some heartworm positive animals, which those adoptions would be free of charge. But we need some assurance that you're going to get this animal treated for heartworm, because heartworm can be passed on to other animals through mosquito bites. If a mosquito bites the dog who is heartworm positive and then transfers that microfilaria to another dog, then that dog will become infected with heartworm. So we obviously do not want that to be happening. So we do ask that type of stuff, but it's pretty simple. We don't really We don't want to judge you. You know, not every dog needs to live in a fancy house, or not every dog needs to live on a fancy bed. You know, dogs just wants to be loved. They give us unconditional love, and that's what we want to give them back too. And we want to give them a safe, healthy environment. And we don't want them running loose. You know, if you've had a history of surrendering a lot of animals to the shelter, what's going to make this one any different? So we want to make sure you're in a stable environment to be able to take care of the animal for its lifetime. You know, it's a lifetime commitment. Everyone seems to forget that. They are a lifetime commitment. And, you know, I say to some young folks, sometimes they come into the shelter and I'll happen to see them. And I'll say, do you have any clue on where you'll be 5 years from now? Oh, no, Doc, I don't even know where I'm moving next year or two. I said, so are we really sure we want to bring an animal into that environment? Because what's kind of lacking in this community that's not as lacking in the other communities where we transfer a lot of animals to is pet-friendly rentals. A lot of places does not allow you to have pets. Which is a problem, because the truth is, I have children now. They're now 10 and 12, but I can tell you my children did more damage to my home in Ohio than my animals did. So we need to keep that in mind, and we need to encourage property managers to allow and be more lenient on pet ownership.
How is that the main problem then when it comes to getting people who return the animals, is mainly because the landlord won't? That's
one main reason, and the lack of training. A lot of people don't realize, I wrote an article a couple weeks ago in Critter Corner in the Sun News about, you know, what are we looking for when we bring an animal home, and what are we expecting to happen, and the mistakes we make. And one of the big mistakes we make is when we bring a new animal home, we feel so sorry for it that it was left at the shelter, which I totally agree with. And then you bring it into your home, but you don't give it any guidelines. You don't give it guidance. You want them to get up on your bed. You want them to do all this stuff. You give them so much freedom that they're going to shred your home because they don't know how to behave in your home. So we need to really, I mean, when I adopt adult dogs, and I don't take them off a leash when I first bring them in the house. They need to know where they are allowed and not allowed to go. And then I have a crate, and I crate train them. And so many adopters makes the mistake of killing these animals with their love by not wanting them in a crate because they think they're being cruel when they're really not being cruel. The dogs feels very safe in the crate and very secure there, and they view that as their bedroom. And I mean, where do we go whenever we want solace? We go to our bedroom, and that's how they feel also. So we get a lot of returns for jumping fences and for destroying things in the home, as well as my landlord doesn't allow me to have them.
I see. And
those are your top 3 reasons for surrendering to the shelter.
Okay. Now, as far as getting the word out in the community about unwanted dog breeding, I mean, is that really grown over the last few years, or?
I think it has, because look at the intake is going down, and we don't nearly have as many puppies as we used to have. So it is a positive thing, and I credit all the local media for supporting us up there and really helping to get the word out just like you're doing. I think that's awesome, and people need to think. I just had a gentleman say to me 2 Wednesday nights ago at church, he had gotten a beautiful German Shepherd, and we talked about the vaccines and that, and I said, well, you know, when he's about 4 months old, bring him on into the shelter and we can alter him for $35. Oh, you know, he's so beautiful. I think I want to have a litter or so. And it's like, really? Do you have homes for this litter of 12 puppies? Forever homes? Because I have about 4 pure-blooded German Shepherds at the shelter right now as we speak.
Wow. So what is the process then of what an animal will go through before it actually gets to the point where it has you have to euthanize it?
Well, you know, there's several different criterias that we go on. We haven't really euthanized for space for the past 5 months, which is a very positive thing. We do euthanize for behavior. That's probably the first thing. that we really evaluate, except for extreme medical condition, hit by cars, severe injury, seizuring, those types of things where the animal is suffering. Those animals are euthanized pretty immediately. Sometimes we don't even wait for their 3 days because it's inhumane to keep them alive. And then we go based on behavior. We evaluate for dog aggression. We evaluate for resource guarding, like we just talked about, and then behaviorally timid animals. And that's a real touchy one for people because they see this little dog crunched in the corner of the kennel and they feel sorry for it. But the dog has not been socialized. They say, oh, it's been abused. But it hasn't been abused in the way most people understands abuse. It was abused by not socializing it to humans. So the truth of the matter is that dog is petrified of you when he sees you, or any human. And no rescue is going to take that, or very few. The APA has taken a few of those animals. And it takes longer for them to rehab them, so they're holding on to them longer, so they're unable to take more. It's not their fault at all, but it's a difficult situation. So we euthanize those animals because none of the rescues in Massachusetts is going to take these, or in New Hampshire or in New Jersey. They want dogs that's going to come off of that truck with their leash on, tail up, and they're ready to roll into a new home. So I make the decision, is it inhumane to keep this animal alive? And I feel that it is. I equate it as whenever activist questions me on it. They used to question me back in Ohio. I cannot swim. If you pushed me in the pool, I can't swim. So someone's going to have to get me out. So if every time I saw a human, or if I was a dog or a cat, and you pushed me in the pool, it's the same as every time I see you, you push me in the pool and my adrenaline level goes up, my fear goes up, and I just freak out. Every time they see me walk by the kennel, every time that cat sees me reach into her cage, that's what's happening to her. And it's really not humane when you know there's not going to be a positive outcome. And also what adopters don't realize is those animals are, unless they are trained properly to come out of this behavior, they are who bites people. Because they're fearful, they're scared, and they're biting out of the need to protect themselves, or they think of a need to protect themselves, even though we know we're not going to hurt them. They don't know that. So those are the three big behavior reasons that we euthanize for. And then after that, we euthanize based on illness. We treat a lot of distemper and parvo dogs. We euthanized a parvo puppy this morning. She was out flat. Her other sibling died the other day, and then the other sibling's doing fabulous. They're little rot wannabe puppies, and they're very cute. So hopefully this one will have a positive outcome. But we did lose another one this morning because it just didn't respond to our treatment. And we don't do Cadillac treatment. We can't. We're a shelter. But we do the best that we can do.
Is parvo a big problem here in this area?
A parvo is a huge problem here. About a month and a half ago, I would say every single puppy that came through off of animal control or through the front door was testing positive for parvo. It was not uncommon for us to have people bring in a box of puppies. 2 just died this morning. I said, don't move any further. Let's go and get the parvo test kit. Let's test these puppies right now before we expose other animals in our shelter.
How quick can that move around the shelter?
The incubation period is anywhere from 5 to 10 days. It's extremely contagious. I could have a very big outbreak in 5 days.
Wow. So I'd like to know a little bit about where the center is right now and what are some of the challenges that the center is facing and, in the next immediate future.
Our current challenge, we have several challenges. A personnel issue challenge is to get the right people in that's going to work hard and take good care of the animals. For our animal caregivers. And then for our administrative staff, it's hard to get people to want to come in and work at shelters. We are currently down three supervisory positions. I'm currently recruiting nationally. Hopefully that the wonderful weather out here is going to bring some older people who has been in a shelter a long time, who would like to come out to this warmer climate. I'm hoping that happens. We shall see. The next big challenge that we have right now is our overabundance of pit bulls in the shelter. There will be no pit bulls on any of the transports next week, except for possibly the pit mom and her puppies going up north. But our Tuesday transfer west and our transfer Thursday, Friday, Saturday going out east, they have requested no pit bulls because they have enough of their own. We have an abundance of pit bulls. If they show any behavior issues at all, we do humanely euthanize them. So what is currently left in the shelter, to be honest with you, is awesome pit bulls, but nobody wants them.
Is it because of the stigma, really?
It's because of the stigma. Do you own dogs, sir?
No, I don't have any.
Would you like to adopt a pit bull?
I would if I could allow them at my place.
There you go, that rental, see? What did I say? What is our big problem?
Yeah.
It's the property management. We really need to work with the real estate department here and the property management and all the developments to be more lenient on having animals on the properties because they are part of people's families. And they really should allow them on the property. I have 2 rental homes in Ohio and 1 rental home in Georgia, and they all have pets. So I understand all of the concerns. But we will get to a point where I'm very afraid is possibly next month, where I will be euthanizing extremely adoptable, friendly, beautiful pit bulls because we just have too many.
How many exactly do you have right now? Around rough number?
I probably have over 100.
Oh, wow. Quite a bit. Well, I want to thank you very much for joining us and sharing with us about the center. And thank you very much for sharing your time as well. Thank you so much for having me, sir. All right. Our guest was Dr. Beth Vesco-Mock from the ASCMV. I always want to get that. It's a long acronym for me. It's very long, very long. Thank you very much for joining us. This is Fronteras, a Changing America.